Hey Dragons, we're going to take a look at some end of course star algebra strategies and some example problems. On some of the problems I'm going to go give you multiple ways of doing the problem. On others, just one way. We're going to focus on calculator, matchy-matchy type problems, as well as characteristic vocabulary / bucket problems. So the first thing you need to do is you need to be comfortable and be confident, and then remember to use your formula chart. If you are in a classroom that has a bunch of anchor charts and you're on a topic, try to visualize that anchor chart that you've been looking at all year long. The first 40 minutes, go ahead and scan for the calculator matchy-matchy. That would be anything with a graph, table, or equation, as well as anything that has the word equivalent, in which you can do the 3-5-7 method. Substitute 3 for the first variable, 5 for the second variable, etc. Get a number and go. Use the next hour, go through and scan for the characteristic vocabulary, or what I call bucket knowledge problems. And then finally at the very end, do the problems that aren't in any of the two categories I mentioned earlier, the hard problems, the ones that really suck up a lot of time. Okay, and then go back and check your answers. So I'm going to look at some problems from the STAR release 2018, and notice that I'm jumping around. In the lower right hand corner, I'm going to keep a count of the number of problems that we do, just to keep a tab on the magic number of 22. Alright, so on this one it has the word equivalent. There are several things you can do. You can actually do the problem algebraically by distributing. You can put this expression in Y1 and then put the answer choices in Y2. Go to your table and play matchy-matchy. Make sure that all of them in Y1 and Y2 are the same. Or you can do 3-5-7. You can substitute in parentheses 3 everywhere you see an X in the regular screen and get your answer. Same thing here, we got the word equivalent. Look at your formula chart if you want to use the exponent rule, and then you can substitute parentheses 3 for K, parentheses 5 for R on the regular screen and play matchy-matchy. On this one, what we're going to do is we're going to, there are multiple ways I think. We'll look at the graph, find 3 points, pick the clean ones. I got the origin, I got the vertex, and I got the other x-intercept in my calculator. Again, that's stat edit. And then we do a quadratic regression by doing stat calc 5. And then we can pick up our coefficients for the quadratic term and the linear term and get our answer. You could also put the equations in y equals, but notice that your x and y axis in the picture need adjustment. So you can go adjust the calculator like I have right here and go through and select the answer choices one at a time, press graph, and what do you know, you matchy-matchy. Okay. On this one, another word is equivalent. What you could do is you could do box multiplication, take the answers and do a length times width type problem with box multiplication. You can put the question in Y1 and go through individually with the answers and put that in Y2 and play matchy-matchy in the table. Now I have some pictures of the calculator over here. This is a very old calculator, so some of the screenshots you see, the entry of data might look a little different on your calculator. Don't let that throw you off. Okay? Now you could also substitute parentheses 3 for every x that you see. And if you notice in my first line on my calculator screen, that's what I get when I plug in parentheses 3 to the question. And the second line that I have right here is what I get when I plug in a 3 into answer choice A. Notice I get the same numeral, -102, matchy-matchy. Number 18, see how I'm skipping around? I'm not going sequentially. Got an equation in the question, equation in the answer. This one's an easy y1, y2, matchy-matchy. 26, again, equivalent. There are multiple ways you can do this. Put the question in y1, go through with the answers individually, and do matchy-matchy in the table, second graph. There's the word equivalent again. Multiple ways you can do this. If you substitute in parentheses 3, notice that in the upper screen, this one right here is what I get when I do the question. Make sure you press enter after you finish typing in the top. And notice I get 27, and then I come over here and put in parentheses 3 here, and notice that I'm playing matchy-matchy on the regular screen. You could also do this with your formula chart. 36, once again, there's the word equivalent. Question in y1, answer choice in y2. This is an easy matchy-matchy on this one. Okay. You could also do a box multiplication, but it's a 3 by 2 box multiplication. Can get a little messy if you're not careful. Or as a checking or as a desperation, you can go through and put in a 3, parentheses 3, everywhere you see an H, and if you do that, you're going to get the right answer. I didn't show that for you because I don't want to take up too much time. All right, which graph best represents this? We got an equation. We're going to put it in our calculator. And in this one, if you press graph, you notice that the scales are a little different. It's not going to be very neat. It's going to be very small. So go to your alternative. Go to your table and look for your y-intercept and a very clean point. And in this particular case, you can see down here in my table, I got the red arrow going to the y-intercept on F, and then 110 is very clearly right there. It doesn't happen on any of the other graphs, so F is my answer. Table, we're going to do a regression, stat edit. Week is going to be list 1, and the balance in dollars is going to be week 2. Make sure you put all your points in, and that the number of L1s equal the number of L2. Okay. We know we're going to do a linear regression because we read the problem. See the word linear. We're going to pick 4, and then our rate of change or our slope is going to be the A value. I wish they would use M, but they use A. We got to get used to it. On this one, which equation is best represented by this graph? What you can do is you can zero out each of the answer choices because it's just one step from being solved for y. So on this, only thing I got to do is subtract 7 from both sides, and the equation is solved for y. Now notice how I put it in my calculator. I don't even distribute. I don't worry about that. I just write down what you see over here when I solve for y. And we can play matchy-matchy. Press the graph, we know that's the one. Another equivalent problem, you can look at your formula chart and work it that way. You can substitute parentheses 3 for everything, parentheses 5 for everything. Got to be really careful on that one. And go back to this. Or you can just notice that if you go to 10 times 4 is 40, divided by 2 is 20, so you're going to have an answer with 20. All right. And if you look at these two answers, B and D, this one doesn't have any exponents other than 1 over here. And I know that all this stuff doesn't wind up being 1. So I pick B. Pretty easy. Slope. On this one, you can do a regression even with 2 points. We'd like 3, but in this case we do 2. Do a stat edit, and there's your slope. You can also use your slope formula. Look for your formula chart, and you go from there. Okay, remember to subtract your y's on top, and be careful when you're subtracting negatives like we're doing in this example. Equivalent, this is a calculator matchy-matchy, real simple. Put the question on a blank screen, get a decimal, and go through and find which one of the answer choices gives you the same thing. The range, this one you're given an equation. You got to know what range is. That's going from the bottom to the top. And you got to realize that range is Y, so we don't even consider the answer choices with X. If you notice, I put a I put a roof here with the red line after I graphed and got a picture of the equation, and I see that everything is below or less than the red line that I put there. This one, several ways you can do this. You can substitute each of the answer choices in for the letter N, and I show this right here real fast. I substitute in parentheses -9. Remember to put your answers in parentheses when you type that in, regular screen, so you can do that. You can also put the left side of the equation in Y1, right side in Y2, and do a second Calc 5, and it'll show you the intersection at the lower left of your screen. You could also distribute and solve for this algebraically, which I did right here. Pretty bad with a mouse, but you get the idea. On this one, what we're going to do is we're going to pick 3 points. 2 of them are very clear. They actually give them to them, and then we go and find the vertex. I put in 0, -6. I do a quadratic regression because the question says quadratic. And I know that C is my y-intercept, so the answer to this problem is -6. Over here, we can read the problem, and we notice that we need something that shows numbers being cut in half. So we got equations, so we're going to put that in our calculator into Y1 and go to the table, and we're going to look for the one that actually has outputs that are being cut in half each time. And if you notice over here, half of 64 is 32, half of 32 is 16. Notice that we're starting over here, we're starting with 1024 with an X value of 0. Make sure you get that one. You can get your answer. This one, what's the value? We got an equation, put it in Y1, go to your calculator, but you do have to know that this guy right here, this 16, is actually an input or an X value. So you look for X in your first column and you go play matchy-matchy. Over here, the solutions, there are several ways you can do this. We can substitute the answer choices in for X, like I did right here. We're going to have to do them 2 times, once for the first number and once for the second number, and you can see that in a regular screen that J is my answer. You could also set this thing equal to 0 by subtracting 81 from both sides and then putting it in Y1, and then you need to scan the X values for -16 and 2, making sure that each of those has a Y value of 0, because that puts them on the X-axis. On this one, you're given an equation. If you put this in Y equal, it's not going to show up, but you can put this in your Y equal button, and notice that we are looking for the ground. The ground is the X-intercept, you must know that. And so I notice that 40, 0 is on the X-axis, so that's where it hits the ground, so the answer is 40. You could also do this algebraically by solving for X. Subtract 60 from both sides, divide by -1.5. On this one right here, we just go through, we're given numbers as answers, and so we plug that in for W. So I did put parentheses 8 everywhere for a W, and notice which one actually gives me a 0. 8 is the only one that does that. Now, at this particular point, guess what? If you've gotten all these problems with the calculator, you have passed the STAR test for algebra, and you never ever have to do this test again, unless you want to. Then they'll probably make you pay. So I'm going to do a second video, and I'm going to show you how you can keep going and get commended.